Welcome to the Connected Campus podcast, where we explore the ways that diverse professionals are working every day to optimize their efforts to recruit, retain, and graduate their students.
I appreciate you all jumping on for this particular session where we are going to be talking more kind of generally around personalizing the prospective student experience. So some of the context around the kind of the current moment and things that folks can do in higher education to kind of better support with that outcome. So I'll introduce myself quickly and let our guest here for this session, our speaker, introduce themselves as well. So I'll be moderating just kind of a conversation for this as well. But I'm the community engagement lead for Pathify. I've been on the team for a few months now. I host our podcast, Connected Campus, so you can check that out to keep the learning going after this awesome summit. I've been working in higher education for several years in a variety of capacities, and just really excited to have this conversation with our guest, Vielka, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Vielka Hoy. I'm the founder and CEO of Bridge to College. I've been in education now for about 25 years. I mostly as a teacher, and then working in college access and an education researcher. So my research looks at race and machine learning, actually, and I just apply it to college admissions. So I've been doing this work, for about 25 years, about half of that, including college access. So happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And there's a lot that goes into the conversation that we're having today around personalizing the prospective student experience, around the tools, the platforms, the strategy, the people that you're putting to this work and everything. So we're bringing in Vielka for her expertise in this area. So we're going to start just with kind of setting the groundwork, talking about a little bit of the context of how we got to this moment. Higher education, obviously in the US, been around for hundreds of years, and a lot of different institutions nationwide supporting students, and their mission and their structures have kind of evolved over time and everything. But the moment we're at still has a long way to go, I think, around kind of the personalization and better supporting the needs of all learners. So however you kind of want to tackle sort of this very high level question to start, Vielka, how did we get here? What is this current moment that we're sort of encountering with prospective students in higher education?
Yeah, I think the also sort of a lesson we learned in the classroom is that the loudest students don't represent the majority of students. So we know that the bulk of students represent some underserved community, be that low income, first generation, girls going, or female students going into STEM, students of color. The range is so wide that there's, on the low end, we're talking about 60% of students, yet we tailor our messaging and our products always to the students who, like I said, I call them the loudest, but they're the students who must go to a certain school. They're the students who typically won't get funding and are applying and over applying to student aid. And again, the bulk of students are these students who are also very high achieving, but they don't have access to the messaging or the resources to be able to even hear about most colleges. As you all know, the way that students, especially pre-pandemic, we're hearing about colleges is basically based on brand ID. So they are the ones opting to send their SAT scores. They're the ones who, knowing the name, they're searching in these hand raiser tools. But there isn't a mechanism for the bulk of schools that don't have that name ID to find those students, and then for those students to then apply to them. So then it creates this false illusion that we're only talking to a very over-resourced set of students who knows where they want to go, knows who has heard of this college basically because of their high marketing tools and their sports teams, but aren't necessarily a good fit. So one of the things, our whole key at Bridge to College is doing academic and financial fit, which is what most people think most students are interested in, but we also do what we call social fit, where we're looking at what campuses will help students of various identities thrive. We know that being admitted to school has a lot to do with these academic and financial metrics, but remaining and graduating on time have to do with these social metrics. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good, like starting point, because like there's even just the general kind of point of order where like sometimes like the headlines and sort of the zeitgeist out there, it's a lot of people where it's like, yeah, these are journalists working at like, a prestigious newspaper or something. They probably went to the Ivy League. They're talking about that.
Right.
So like some of the things in just terms of kind of the landscape kind of is biased towards a very select few institutions and all that. So that's also obviously informing just like what are the institutions that people are hearing about and talking about and all of that. And those aren't the ones that are, educating most of the learners in this country. Right. So yeah, like there's just a kind of obviously a very, aptly named for your, organization of bridging that gap of how
Right.
students collect information about their options that may be a far better fit for them than those few sort of brand name, household name kind of institutions and everything. So like it is that reckoning that we're kind of, I think, going through, where there's been a lot of work over the past several years around college access. But if we do want to have a more positive impact on sort of student success and retention, is like, yeah, you need to help these students find options that are truly going to be that better fit, across the board in all those areas that you mentioned. And that's going to really help your first gen students, your adult learners, your online learners, and, international students, like all these areas of students where they just aren't obviously, the constituents that these institutions are really built for originally. So they aren't as well suited to serve them and to be sort of positioning themselves to kind of be right alongside other options as students are determining where they want to go and what they want to study and those sort of things.
Right. And when we when I started doing this, the bulk of the questions were sort of related to these nuts and bolts things that they weren't finding information from the colleges on, mostly because the colleges are looking at the loudest person in the room, those over-resourced kids. And it was like simple stuff like, I don't know if I should take biology or chemistry and I really want to go to college. Well, we could adjust that. We can tell you that. Or, how is there a way, is there any college that I could go to that won't, charge me 70,000 a year, that have some chances for getting eight? Like we can adjust for all of those things. And like I said, the bulk of universities in this country do that. It's just the matter of being able to communicate that to the students. And like I said, bulk of students, we joke about this, but I think, it's serious. Like you can buy a Yale sweatshirt from Amazon and wear it. Nobody's going to say anything. Like it'll still be totally fine. But if that's the only sort of criteria that you want, but in terms of going somewhere where you're going to graduate on time, have a degree that provides a return on the investment and won't put you in debilitating debt, there's plenty of options to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because I mean, there's so many institutions in just the US, and it's just like trying to get them out to where people can, more easily find them, or just sort of really kind of serve up like, here is this place and what they have to offer, kind of like filtering maybe some of the other information out to just, again, like really direct what students are going to really want to know and need to know. So yeah, like how do we kind of best position them in that way and kind of cut through the noise and those sort of things. But I think the next question is like one area that I really wanted to talk about too. So give it a little bit more time, is like those things that are really important to students. And that social fit is one that I know is something where I think like institutions might believe that they could show like, hey, look, all these students are having fun, and there's clubs and those sort of things to get involved in. And I think that's part of it, but there is just a real salient part of sort of, am I going to feel safe in the state, in this institution, those sort of things. Can you kind of like speak to that, of like, the factors that are truly important to students when they're deciding where to go to college? I know that's a big one.
Yeah, we've never had a student ask us like which dorm food is better between these schools, and that's going to be my deciding factor. We've gotten questions like, where will I thrive as a Black woman? trans students, where will I be safe? A lot of questions when you have events that make the news, racially motivated events or other type of biases. A lot of questions around, well, what did the university do in response, and how are they going to be proactive about these events moving forward? We a few years ago, we got a lot of questions from Muslim students about where they would be safe on campus. We're getting a lot of questions from families now about where female students can get a robust healthcare. We related to another common question about sexual assaults on campus and what universities are doing. So combined with the instances of sexual assault, and now these questions about female reproductive rights, parents especially are concerned about sending their students to certain states, and if there's going to be enough resources for their students. And you know, a lot of questions, for example, for students of color who are going into STEM, if they will have faculty members that look like them, what kind of supports they'll have. You know, they talk oftentimes about feeling like they're like these like mascot for speaking on behalf of all people of color when they're in these like physics departments or computer science departments. So the question becomes, or they've heard about that happening. So the question becomes like, how will the university support me in not feeling or having to interact with these microaggressions? But it's a lot of these like very much like, how can I thrive as in my own identity? You know, we're getting a lot of trans athlete questions. So where can I thrive in my own identity? Especially at this really crucial time in my life where I'm entering adulthood, and then looking for universities to support them as they progress in that space.
Mm-hmm. Well, because like part of it is like, institutions might be hearing things like this and saying, well, we have a lot of stuff on our website. And it's like, well, again, it's just the idea of trying to cut through the noise. So it's like identifying like, okay, here are the key areas where we can try to personalize the prospective student experience to serve up to them the things they truly want to know around, that social fit, that safety, and everything. Because like something when I was thinking about this, it's like, as much as going to college is that sort of emotional aspiration, and obviously a lot of people where it's like, they have this notion of like, I want to go to Harvard or Yale and those things, but it's kind of like based on TV or movies, or like there's just kind of this romantic notion and all that. But it's like, certainly there is different kind of ingredients in that sort of formula of like, okay, well, you're just looking, obviously, like you want to go to a place where you're going to have a safe, fun, experience to get a credential to further your, career goals and aspirations and stuff like that. Because like, and you just start to break those things down. And then what are the tools and platforms and strategies that we're using to sort of uplift that information and serve it up to students so that they can really get a clear and kind of engaging and relevant look at what this institution has to offer. And I know what we talked about is that like institutions, all the ones across the country that are struggling to kind of market themselves in a relevant, engaging way for, what students really want to know is, they may be kind of getting into this sort of like arms race and trying to compete with the, the Harvards and Yales of the world. But it's really like, you can almost kind of like circumvent that if you're going about it the right way to kind of really get to students more directly and give them the information that they're looking for, where like some of these other people that you may be eyeing to be like, how can we be more like them? It's like, they're just like on another level where they don't even like they're just there, and students will come because again, like they're neighbors. So it's like, you have to figure out how to kind of work smarter, not harder, to show how you will address those areas of fit that students are really concerned about. So
yeah. I think that the key to that is the bulk of students. So like that 60% that would be considered under-resourced at some point in their career aren't necessarily going to college to, well, let me put it this way. One of the things that makes them under-resourced is they don't have networks that will eventually get them a job or introduce them to somebody who will fund their startup or like these other things. So they're going to college to do that. And so their sort of goal around their goals around, becoming a working professional, being able to having this degree ensure that I get a job, making sure that that job provides a return on investment for the degree. Those are goals that are very specific to those students. So I think the first thing is like understanding that that's that goal, and this idea of, going to school to sort of find yourself and to you have these like fun moments in the dorms is somebody else's dream, because that's a privilege to be able to have your greatest aspiration be, your freshman roommate. Where like for other people, for especially under-resourced students, it's very like professional oriented. And colleges are also making the argument to them that this is the best path for you to get that return on the investment. So to say to, for example, an under-resourced student who, muscled through public school to take AP classes and did really well, you should come here because, we have foosball tables in the dining hall, doesn't sort of satisfy the reason they even were looking at college. They're very much focused on what is this going to do for me, and how am I going to be able to use this tool to further my career aspirations. Where my family, obviously people of color, immigrants from Central America, but I still make fun of my cousins. My cousin went to UC San Diego, and after 4 years, she was kind of like, I didn't learn enough, so I'm going to hang around another year. And we were like, what are you doing? That was like the most bizarre thing we've ever heard. And I went to NYU and I was on scholarship, and me and my friends had calculated down to the hour how much we were spending, and so we were 4 or less and very much focused on what we had to do to ensure that that degree was going to be put to use immediately after graduation, which a lot of our friends weren't that focused on, and that was what drew me to the university. They made that argument to me. Yeah. I think the other thing to keep in mind too is like there's also this sort of elephant in the room around college debt, and if we were as educators making a good argument for why that debt was necessary, like was it necessary because it would impact the housing market? Is this debt necessary because all those people got really high paying jobs? Like stuff like that would make sense. But when we're saying we have this tremendous amount of debt, we have this terrible graduation rate, most of that debt is acquired by students who never earned a degree. Like we're not, like these are weird linkages that we're making. And for a student who is sort of deciding if college is the right place to go, we're making a terrible argument to them.
Right. Because like sort of those like squishy parts of like you said, like identity development, those sort of things like should be happening if you're satisfying the other portions where like hopefully a student doesn't have to worry too much about, how they're paying for college and those sort of things. So I don't know, like Gia kind of giving really, I think like the kind of tip of the spear here is like I said, like the tools and platforms you're using to put yourself forward to students where like, because I kind of honestly, leads to the next question I want to ask is like, how institutions sometimes are kind of contributing to the problem here, and maybe either, unbeknownst to themselves because like they're kind of needlessly obfuscating, these things about like, this is what the campus culture and community looks like and all that, because like, I think they might be too focused on that idea of like, we need to make this look so compelling that it's almost like, well, what does it cost? It's like, what's price? Like price shouldn't be like in the conversation, like, or something, because it's like, it's just this amazing life-changing experience or whatever. But it's like, no, like we should be able to clearly show this is the type of experience, the opportunities that you're going to have, and, how we're going to support you in all the ways that matter to have this experience. So like, how can you create a really robust, engaging, thing like, the prospects portal, where like you can really contour that to leverage all the best features of what your institution has to offer. And then certainly, the work that you do is it's all trying to kind of just clear away all this very kind of murky, blurry aspects of how students are gathering information about particular institutions and everything. So if you just wanted to speak, briefly about that, of like kind of, how institutions are kind of, again, perhaps inadvertently kind of contributing to the problem here around sort of, how they've kind of set up themselves and how students are, gathering information about them.
Yeah, so the thing that Bridge to College does is double-sided, right? So on one side, students in high schools can use the tool for free and they get to know colleges that they probably would never have heard of. We get a lot of kids saying like, where is that? I'm like, don't worry about it. Just get a coat. It's fine. And so that's that side. But on the other side, on the college side, we have a data platform that is informing them of these practices that are getting in their own way. Some of the top ones that we are able to highlight for colleges using these data tools is this implicit requirement for calculus. So colleges will either explicitly say they require calculus or implicitly look for calculus on a transcript. And what they're assuming is that students who've taken calculus are motivated and, they're resilient and all these things. But the bulk of high schools in this country don't even offer calculus. And for public schools, it's an additional credential. Most teachers aren't going to get it. That teachers don't get paid well enough to do the base thing, let alone an extra thing. And so it's, we met with one college, and when we told them that, they said, they stopped us and they're like, wait, you're saying that for this college, it was required, or it is required that students take calculus in order to apply. So when we told them that most under-resourced schools don't have a qualified calculus teacher, he was shocked. And he said to us, you're saying that students aren't taking calculus because they don't want to. It's because it's not available. And you're like, right. So then it shouldn't be that much of a surprise. But when we've even looked at schools that don't require it and their own sort of understanding of what it meant to take calculus, what we found was they were offering most scholarships to students who took calculus, and they were mostly admitting students who took calculus, when this college, in my mind, didn't even offer a calculus class for freshmen. The highest level of math that they offered was pre-calculus. So so if you take a student who was successful in calculus and if they enrolled at the school, the chances of them leaving were really high because the school wasn't an academic fit for that institution. And so what we're able to show them is, here are all the students who did not take calculus, not because of them, because the school didn't offer it, but here are all the other ways that we know that they would be successful in conceptual math. And by the way, they're all going to major in English, so why do we care about calculus? And they are great fits otherwise, and they actually want to come to your school, so why not consider them? Other things that we found is, especially with limited marketing budgets, colleges will look at specific regions and ignore other regions that are great fits for their campuses. Another big one that we do, where college, as we're saying, colleges get in their own way, is what is that saying about forest for the trees? Like they'll the trees for the forest, but they will like a student will need, let's say, an additional $1,000 a year, and instead of, and that $1,000 a year would mean that student actually graduates sometime from that institution. And so the institution will say, we're not going to give it to you. And so that student goes elsewhere. So that $4,000 extra that would have cost the university for a highly successful student to come, they're losing out on much more because that student is going elsewhere. So, we've had campuses tell us, for example, that a majority of students drop out because they're commuter students and don't have transportation. So then you ask, well, how much is a bus pass? And so is the cost of that bus pass worth losing that many students. And so those are the things that we really highlight for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as we're kind of nearing the end, I'm going to
Oh man,
ask Vielka one more question. So yeah, folks, get prepared. You can throw your questions you might want to have answered here live in the chat or elsewhere. But so yeah, I mean, I think there's, because I want to just kind of ask it more kind of directly, because I think, yeah, you're talking about sort of the policies and procedures that institutions might have that are sort of contributing to the problem here of kind of getting in the way of like my mind. I'm always thinking in metaphors. It's like, how can we sort of like clear out the gunk to like open the spigot of like, okay, this institution can like flow information to students to sort of like, they can acknowledge like, oh, we have some shortcomings around like, something like calculus and the way that we vet student applications and different things like that. Let's clear that out so we can kind of get closer to reaching the right students, and students can kind of see and consider us as a viable option, those sort of things. But because yeah, I mean, I think I'm just seeing the kind of harmony and sort of the pathway between sort of like, a student starting their, college search process with something like what you're doing, and that they can potentially like go to like a prospect portal and see a really clear and engaging sort of insight into like the campus experience that they would be in store for, and connect with folks to ask questions and all that. But like, just again, really kind of clearing the way and making something that's accessible, outside of social media and be mobile friendly and those sort of things, versus just like, well, we've got our website, or, we share a lot on Facebook or something. And it's like, well, I'm not on there. And it's like, okay, like how can we sort of do everything that we can to invest smartly the limited, marketing resources and stuff that we have to present our best selves that address the student needs and clear out any sort of the like, hurdles and friction points that would kind of inhibit students. But yeah, just any other thoughts that you have around, advice that you would give for institutions to better personalize their prospective student experience?
Yeah, I think too, universities need to understand that they each have a specific set of personality traits, right, that are very distinct from other campuses. So like when we talk to students, I'm thinking about a particular student right now who was really like, man, I wish I'm really interested in political science and statistics, and I wish there was like a major. I was like, that's a computational social scientist, like that's all over the place. But we couldn't find, like we spent like days trying to find campuses where you could understand what the major was, what type of coursework. We didn't want data science that was too computer sciencey. We want with more stats. Then we went and did the research on who was hiring for those jobs. And, aside from our tool, I just feel like those could be like better connections that universities make on their website. On the website, you see kids playing in the snow, the mascot at the football game, you see, but for the actual thing, you've got to dig and dig and dig. And then, you get questions on these sort of technicalities on when to apply. Can I apply to this one early and not this one? But does this count? Another question we've had come up is, I live in Maryland. Is that in-state? Does that count as in-state for Virginia? But there's like a lot of these like technicality questions, and I'm sure all these admissions folks get emails about. And I just sort of think about like, if maybe this is the loudest student in the room, one that those type of questions then need to be posted somewhere. So oftentimes like we will email, and what the response back we'll get, if we get one, will be like copy and paste of what the FAQs on the website, and you're kind of like, I can read. Obviously it wasn't clear enough. But I think if it's just these real like nuts and bolts thing, it's kind of like, I've said yes to the date, I need to know when you're going to pick me up. just make it super clear and what I should wear. And that's the part I think what like colleges like miss is they're like, well, if you do this and you do this, and why don't you search here for 30 minutes and we'll figure it out. But it's like I said yes to the date. Where are we going? What should I wear? And that's the sort of missing.
Yeah. Well, because with that metaphor, which I think is awesome, is the idea where like they're gonna try to answer and say like Thursday night we're getting dinner. It's like, but what time and where? Because like that is dramatic. Like it could differ dramatically. Where it's like we talking 5, we talking 7, we're talking like fancy place or whatever. And
right.
I think because it could be again like by no fault of their own. It could be like, a bandwidth and capacity issue where they just aren't able to give that really like personalized answer to students. But I think if you leverage, get smart kind of digital investments, especially where you could have potentially like sort of the like near peer support or those visors and things be more accessible, or again, a place where it sort of like gets rid of all the other noise of like a website. And it's like, here is just all the prospective student information and more optimized sort of contoured things. Like it's just helping them to get those more finite kind of specific questions answered by potentially different people and stuff that are making themselves available. But yeah, I mean, obviously we could talk about this for a very long time, and I wanted to see, I don't think we have any specific questions yet, but feel free to throw those in to just a specific chat or anything. Or I know I've got a few here in my back pocket to kind of keep the conversation going. But yeah, so I think it is like interesting where, it is that idea where like through the whole experience, obviously, like you want to recruit the right students, you want to prevent them from melting, you want to retain them and graduate them and everything, and kind of trying to create that scaffolding through the whole process where, certainly for first generation students and those sort of things, like trying to help guide them through that process. And then, kind of the high impact first year, kind of creating a really supportive environment, which, doesn't require necessarily like all of the resources in the world. And again, aspiring towards these sort of, exceptional institutions. It's like, there's just, again, sort of smart investments that you can make to be really supportive of students and kind of building that scaffolding. So like, I guess just talking through that, because I guess it's that idea of like, okay, we're starting to do these things to kind of make ourselves more kind of discoverable by students and giving them the information that they're looking for as we sort of like bring them in. They're sort of exploring and committing and starting their first year and kind of initial scaffolding, kind of building that foundation. Just thoughts around that of sort of because I guess that would just be kind of giving kind of acknowledgement of sort of like what would be the next step after this. And then, it's kind of a whole different conversation, to talk more about like student success and retention, but like that sort of like acceptance and starting out phase is kind of, I feel like, relevant here. So just any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I worked at Stanford for a while, and I was like super shocked at the amount of supports they gave students. And I'll describe those in a second, but we had the student who had recently graduated from Harvard was asking me about college admissions stuff. And he said, we have to let people know. He's like, because students at Harvard just know the social skills necessary to succeed as soon as they get there. And I said, no, you don't. Harvard just caught you. You're not any different from any other 18-year-old in the country. You're not special, sorry. But Harvard has things in place to catch you. And just like Stanford did, they are very intentional about these 98% four-year graduation rates. And they do things like handhold students in getting a checking account. They're very intentional about how they put together these dorms, who's in charge of the dorm. They got tenured faculty in charge of, 10 students in this dorm, and checking in on them to make sure they're going to bed on time. Like, it was the wildest thing I'd ever seen. But what we understand is those are the things that ensure that students transition and stay. They had the students the first year don't even take a full load, right? This was not the case for me in my undergrad experience. I kept adding stuff, but I think they intention what was set up for us was a lighter load. You integrate slowly, but just a lot of these pieces. There was I think about this student who at Harvard who was like more yeah, exactly. I was like, why not put another one? A student at Harvard who took this year off, and I only know this because of the she's a popular student, more of a celebrity, and for that year off, they said to her, okay, in this year, you have to practice things like setting your own alarm and waking up on time. You can't hit snooze too many times. Like, it wasn't like anything, it wasn't like cure cancer by March. It was very like uh basic social skills that we all need to master as professionals that would also lead to success in college. But they didn't assume that kids already knew that. I'm an adjunct professor at a at a 4-year institution right now, and they very much told the students, you we're not helping you get devices. It literally said in their sort of onboarding, like, if you're having problems, it's probably because you're using a Mac and you need to go get yourself another computer. It was very strange to me because it was very much like, look, you're on your own, let me know when you're done. It was like so counter to the experience of working at Stanford, but it just really demonstrated the importance of the sort of hand holding of those like intangibles that seem, and I'm sure are very expensive, but have tremendous outcomes for retention and later graduation rates.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a thing I've heard for the past couple of years, and there's just like a lot of different strategies to kind of go about this, but like those nudges and those sort of things, and just
Yeah.
thinking of kind of the metaphor, but like as my brain often does, it's like in pinball, if there's just that area where it's like, oh, the ball's kind of falling down over here, we're gonna bounce it back up just so you can kind of get, and it's
Yep.
like you still kind of
Yep.
have to keep it up in the air, but they can kind of like support you that way. And I know, like, kind of GX sort of like talking through some of the features, that Pathify offer, like those ideas of personalizing those nudges and putting them in a place where you have the mobile app, you have all that, because it's like, yes, again, acknowledging that not everywhere can have that ratio of like, oh, we got this faculty member to 10 students who could go knock on
Right.
every door and know, what's going on
Right.
with everybody. It's like, how do we just sort of know, like, okay, if they've not done this, we're going to send over this nudge, and here's, the instructions that we provide and all that. Like, you just set up these systems that optimize trying to keep everybody on track, because again, those slight sort of reminders, the nudges, the sort of follow up and everything is often what, increasingly, our students with busy lives and working, adult
Right.
learners, and, they're maybe commuter students, all that, where it's like, yeah, a lot of my time each week is eaten up by like, driving around or doing all these other things. If I could just
Yep.
know kind of like what's on my to-do list, and I don't have to kind of try and uncover and figure all that out. Like, I know that's some of the stuff that we were kind of talking about was sort of like final parting thoughts, but it's like so perfect. I think to
Right.
like just kind of say here is like to not be blaming students who don't know any better when they don't know
Right.
that they like, missed something or whatever. It's like, let's just try to help that, like give them that support and give them that sort of guidance to try to have the safety net, so that like we're trying to give them every opportunity. It's still up to them to do that,
Right.
to do the things that they need to do when they need to do them and how they need to do them. But if we try to, again, clear out sort of the like kind of needless sort of complexity that increasingly is indicative, I think, of, the modern college experience, it's like, let's simplify it for students and, get them this platform that's easily accessible for them and gives them the reminders and things they need to do. Because, it's on the campus, it's on the campus to think through that strategy and create those, those pathways and the portals and, the tools to, create that sort of scaffolding to support their students and everything. But
I should also mention
yeah.
before Gia is the research supports this. So one of the ways that we developed how we would measure social fit wasn't just from these sort of anecdotal experiences. Like, we went through and looked at what research lead or what leads to um, retention and matriculation, and it was things like um, building a network, things like we found research that talked about understanding of institutional racism. A high degree of understanding of institutional racism leads to higher graduation rates. The understanding the value of college is something that leads to graduation. So those were all things that we we continue to figure out how to actually measure and then be able to present in a way. But it wasn't, of all these metrics, and there was like something like 60 something of them, none of them said inherently just good at school. Like, yeah, it wasn't part of the thing. Like having support systems, feeling valued, knowing where to go, those were all these pieces that led to success for students.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate that idea of just like, well, I'm smart, so I'm like good at school, and you're like,
good at everything. Yeah.
I actually want to add to that because I feel like when I was graduating high school, I was definitely good at school. I was good at school, but I was my parents were born in the Philippines and went to college or high school in the Philippines, and then they eventually went to part-time college when we moved to the States. They had me really young. And so their college experience didn't really infer how my college experience would be as that traditional 18 to 22-year-old going to college for the first time. My first semester, I got a D for the first time in my entire life. And it's because I really didn't have the structure, or I did get email fatigue. And I mean, this was the fall of 2008. I was already getting email fatigue. So I can't even imagine the email and tech fatigue that students are getting now with all of the technology that we have today. And one thing that I wanted to say was, I did graduate, thankfully. I did bring my grade up from that D. But also my last year, we had to apply for graduation. And it was one of those where it was just an email sent to us. And I was almost very late to applying for graduation. And had there been something like a prospects portal or something that was really personal, where there was an actual checklist, a task checklist that was in a dashboard that I was looking at every single day, that it's like, what are the actual steps to applying graduation? Not just apply for graduation. Okay, how? Like it's exactly what you're saying. Okay, here's an event, but what time am I getting there? How am I getting there? That sort of thing. Just like personalized hand-holding, but in a way that ensures success and not, there's just so many things that are happening across campuses. So having that personalization really does help with especially building that foundation of a successful first year.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So I know right about at time, so I wanted to just send in the chat here the link to this sessions page in our Zoom events ecosystem here. So I know that because that has resources, Vielka, that you wanted to share. So just wanted to give that a call out. And I think you can also kind of connect with each of us specifically in there if you do want to kind of keep the conversation going. So I don't know, Vielka, if you want to just kind of give a tip of the hat to those resources, what they are.
Yeah, so they're one-pagers on what Bridge to College means when we say academic, financial, and social fit, and just those larger buckets of what each of those means. So Bridge to College, you please feel free to email me, and I'm happy to do demos or even a free year or whatever anyone wants. Just mention you saw me here. But we're in an interesting transition phase, so it'll be a really great time to do that. And and you could also obviously go to our website to learn more about the survey and how we help students.
Perfect. Just thank you for sharing all that and sharing all your wisdom and expertise. And thanks to everybody for hanging out for this session. Enjoy the rest of the summit, and just have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Connected Campus. Please leave a 5-star review for the show and share it so others can discover us. Make sure to also subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Connected Campus.